You're a terrible mother. Marcus yells this at me from across the park bench, loud enough that other people stop and stare. His face is red with the particular kind of rage that comes from someone who's been saving up this insult for weeks, collecting evidence, building a case. The sound carries across Coral Park, a place I used to love, a place where I used to feel safe bringing my children on Saturday mornings. Now it feels contaminated. Now it feels like enemy territory. I'm 39 years old, and my entire world is collapsing on a Saturday afternoon at 2:47 p.m., and I will remember the exact time for the rest of my life. The kids don't need to hear that, I say quietly, pulling Maya and Lucas closer to me. They're both frozen. Maya's 8, and she's learned to make herself small when her father yells. She's learned that the best way to survive is to disappear, to take up as little space as possible, to be invisible. Lucas is 6, and his small hand grabs mine so tight it hurts. His fingernails dig into my palm. He's terrified in a way that only children of conflict can be terrified. The kids need to hear the truth, Marcus continues, his voice loud, accusatory. He's pointing at me now, and his finger looks like a weapon. Their mother is letting herself go. Their mother doesn't work hard enough. Their mother can't even afford a decent lawyer to fight me in court. The smell of the park, cut grass, sun-warmed earth, something floral from the garden, suddenly feels suffocating. I can see other parents looking at us. I can see the judgment forming in their eyes. I can see them thinking, there's a mother who can't control her ex. There's a family in crisis. He's right about the lawyer part. That's what hurts most, the part that's true. You know what? He says, stepping closer. His expensive leather shoes come into view, shoes that cost more than my monthly rent, shoes that represent all the ways he has more power than me. I'm done. I'm filing for full custody next week. I've already hired someone. You work too much. You're never around. The judge is going to see right through you. She's going to see that you're not actually fit to be a mother. My blood goes cold. This isn't a threat anymore, it's a plan. He's serious. He's actually going to try to take my children away from me. He's already hired a lawyer. He's already started building his case. He's already moved past the point of empty threats. I can feel Maya's body tensing against mine. I can feel her trying to make herself smaller. I can feel Lucas squeezing my hand so hard that my fingers are going numb. That's not going to happen, I tell him, but my voice sounds small, unconvincing. Even I don't believe me. We'll see, he says. I have documentation. I have proof you work weekends. I have emails where you talk about your job instead of your kids. My lawyer says I have a very strong case. He says a judge will definitely see the pattern. He probably doesn't have as strong a case as he thinks he does. I know he's probably exaggerating. But that doesn't matter because even fighting him will cost thousands of dollars I don't have. Even winning will traumatize my children. Even if I win, I'll lose, because the next 6 months will be spent in lawyers' offices and courtrooms instead of raising my kids. The next 6 months will be spent defending myself instead of being present. He looks at Maya. His expression softens slightly, which is somehow worse than the anger. You're getting fat, by the way, he says to our 8-year-old daughter. You need to watch what you eat. That dress isn't doing you any favors. She's normal weight. She's healthy. She's perfect in the way that all children are perfect before the world starts breaking them. But I can see her absorbing this in real time. I can see her storing it somewhere inside her where it will fester and grow. I can see the exact moment her own body becomes the enemy. Just go, I say, and my voice is shaking so badly that Lucas looks up at me with fear in his eyes. Not fear of Marcus, fear of me. Fear that his mother can't protect him. Fear that everything he's terrified of is actually coming true. Marcus walks away laughing. He's laughing like he's won something, like he's proven something. And I'm left standing in Coral Park with my 2 children, and I'm shaking so hard I can barely breathe. My hands are shaking. My legs feel weak. My entire body is signaling that I'm in danger. Maya is crying silently, her shoulders shaking without making a sound. Lucas is looking at me like I'm supposed to have answers I don't have. It's okay, I tell them, pulling them close, lying through my teeth. It's okay. Daddy's just upset. But it's not okay. I don't know how to protect them from this. I don't know how to fight someone who has more money than me, more time than me, more confidence than me. I don't know how to win against someone who's willing to hurt children just to prove a point. I don't know how to win. 7 days later, I'm sitting on the same park bench, and I'm not okay. I've called a lawyer. She told me it will cost $15,000 minimum to defend myself against Marcus's custody challenge. I have $8,000 in savings. I have a job that pays okay, but not great. I have 2 children and a mortgage and no family support. I have nothing that will help me win. I'm sitting here watching my children play on the playground, and I'm calculating how long I can go without sleeping if it means I can work extra hours and save money for legal fees. I'm trying to figure out which of my friendships I can sacrifice if it means having more time to work. I'm trying to become the perfect mother on paper, the kind of mother no judge would take children away from. I'm trying to become someone I'm not. A man sits down on the bench next to me. He's probably in his mid-40s. He's wearing an expensive suit that probably costs more than my monthly rent. He has dark hair and the kind of eyes that suggest he's seen things most people haven't seen. He's the kind of man my mother warned me about, powerful, dangerous, someone who doesn't follow normal rules. He doesn't look at me at first. He just sits there, perfectly still, like he has nowhere else to be and all the time in the world to wait. "You look like someone who's about to make a desperate decision," he says finally. I tense. I'm not in the mood for unsolicited advice from strangers. "Just waiting for someone," I say. "No," he says. "You look like someone who's waiting for something terrible, someone who's terrified, someone who's calculating how much longer they can survive in a situation that's destroying them." I don't respond, but he's right, and I hate that he's right. "I've been watching you for the past week," he continues. "Every Saturday you come to this park. You look more anxious each time. Your children look more scared, and you look like you're running out of options. This should alarm me. Someone admitting they've been watching me should trigger every warning instinct I have. But instead, I hear something in his voice that sounds like he actually understands. Like he's not judging me. Like he sees me. I'm dealing with a custody situation," I hear myself say. "My ex-husband is threatening to take my children. He says I'm an unfit mother. He has a lawyer. I can't afford to fight him." "What's your ex-husband's name?" the man asks. "Marcus," I say, and then he asks the question that changes everything. What would happen if Marcus disappeared? I look at him like he's insane, like he's suggesting something completely unhinged, but I'm also thinking about it. I'm thinking about how my life would change. I'm thinking about how my children would stop being afraid. I'm thinking about how I could finally breathe. "He wouldn't just disappear," I say, but even as I say it, I'm wondering if that's actually true. "People do," the man says quietly, "if the right person decides it's necessary." Before I can respond, Marcus's car pulls up across the park. He gets out, and he's already yelling. "You took them to that terrible school," he shouts across the playground. "I told you Maya was supposed to go to private school. You're sabotaging my daughter." The man next to me stands up very slowly. "Excuse me," he says calmly to Marcus. "Is everything okay here?" Marcus looks at him like he might punch him, but he also looks uncertain. This man has the kind of confidence that makes other men hesitate. "This is none of your business," Marcus says. "You're right," the man agrees. "But I think you should leave. These children are frightened, and their mother is at her limit." Marcus is red-faced. He's deciding whether he can win this confrontation. After a long moment, he realizes he can't. "Come on, kids," he says, and he leaves without another word. The man sits back down on the bench next to me. "I need you to understand something," he says. "That man is going to try to take your children away, and he's going to succeed unless something changes. The question is, what are you willing to do to make sure that doesn't happen?" "Who are you?" I ask. "Someone who can help," he says. "Someone who can make sure your problem goes away." He hands me a piece of paper with a phone number on it. "Call me when you're ready," he says. "Call me when you've decided that protecting your children is worth any cost." And then he walks away, and I'm left sitting in the park with a phone number and a terrible choice. I spend the next week staring at that phone number. I don't know who this man is. I don't know what making the problem go away actually means, but I know what I want it to mean. I know what I'm hoping it means. The next day, I get a call from my lawyer. Marcus's lawyer filed a motion for full custody, she tells me. They're citing your work schedule, your lack of parental involvement, your inability to provide stability. Anna, it's a strong case. We're going to need to fight this hard. How hard? I ask. Very hard, she says. It's going to cost at least $20,000, and even then there's no guarantee we'll win. I don't have $20,000. I barely have enough for rent next month. That night I pull out the phone number. I stare at it for a long time. I think about what this could mean. I think about calling the police instead. I think about running away with my children. I think about all the ways this could go wrong. But mostly I think about Maya. I think about the way Marcus told her she was getting fat. I think about Lucas. I think about the way he looked at me in the park, like he was waiting for me to save him. I think about the fact that I can't save them. Not with money, not with lawyers, not with anything legitimate. That night I call the number. He answers on the first ring like he's been waiting for my call. I need help, I tell him. I need to make sure my ex-husband doesn't take my children. Give me your address, he says. I'm going to send someone to help you. The someone is a woman named Isabella, who shows up at my apartment with a folder and a plan. She's professional, she's competent, she doesn't smile much. She looks like someone who's extracted people from bad situations before. We're going to document everything, she tells me over coffee. My children are at school. Every threatening email, every voicemail, every instance where he's violated the custody agreement. We're going to build a case that's so strong that his lawyer won't know what hit him. And if the documentation isn't enough, I ask. Then we make sure he's not in a position to pursue custody, Isabella says. We make sure he's not a threat anymore. I know what she means. I don't ask for clarification. Over the next 2 weeks, Isabella helps me organize documentation of Marcus's behavior. We create files with screenshots of emails, recordings of voicemails, notes about every incident. And then Isabella tells me something that changes everything. Your ex-husband is going to be taken care of, she says. You don't need to worry about him anymore. What do you mean? I ask, even though I know exactly what she means. You'll understand soon, she replies. Marcus goes missing 1 week after Isabella's visit. He doesn't show up for the custody exchange. He doesn't call. He doesn't answer his phone. I wait in the park for 2 hours and he never comes. At first, I'm worried. Is he in an accident? Is he hurt? But as the hours pass, I start to understand what's happened. 3 days later, the police find his car parked at a beach, abandoned. There's no sign of him. There's no indication of foul play. It's like he just decided to disappear. The police investigate, but they don't find anything. Marcus is officially a missing person, but there's no evidence of a crime. No body, no note, just gone. I watch the news coverage and I feel something I didn't expect. Relief. Pure, unfiltered relief. My problem has been solved. My children are safe. My custody is no longer threatened. My life is no longer being controlled by fear. That night, I call the phone number. Did you do something to Marcus? I ask directly. I don't know who Marcus is, the man says. Yes, you do, Marcus, my ex-husband, the man who was threatening to take my children away. That person is gone, the man says. He's not going to hurt you or your children anymore. That's all you need to know. I should ask more questions. I should demand to know what happened to him. I should call the police. But I don't. Because whatever happened, it solved my problem. My children are safe. My custody is secure. Thank you, I tell him. Don't thank me yet, he says. We should meet. There's more to discuss. We meet at a coffee shop downtown. His name is Daniel, and he's in his mid-40s. He's exactly the kind of man my parents warned me about, powerful, expensive, dangerous. But he's also the kind of man who just made my entire world safer. I want to be clear about something, he tells me. What happened to your ex-husband was not an accident. It was deliberate, and it was done on my orders. I don't respond. I can't. I'm trying to process what he's telling me. But it was done because I cared about you, he continues. Because I couldn't stand watching you be threatened. Because I wanted to protect your children. You killed him, I say quietly. It's not a question. I had him taken care of, Daniel says. The distinction doesn't matter much. I should be horrified. I should be running out of this coffee shop. I should be calling the police. Instead, I'm grateful. Why? I ask. Because I'm falling in love with you, he says. And I know that's complicated given the circumstances. But I couldn't watch you suffer anymore. And I couldn't watch your children suffer anymore. So I made it stop. I spend the next week wrestling with what Daniel has told me. I spend the next week wondering if I should turn him in. I spend the next week feeling guilty for not turning him in. I spend the next week feeling grateful for what he did. And then I think about Maya. I think about how she was starting to internalize her father's criticism. I think about how she was starting to believe that she was fat, that she was failing, that she was not enough. And I think about how all of that ended the day Marcus disappeared. I think about Lucas. I think about how he was starting to mimic his father's aggressive behavior. I think about how he was starting to believe that yelling and intimidation were the ways to get what you wanted. And I think about how he stopped, how he became lighter, how he became the sweet 6-year-old he should have been all along. When Daniel calls me, I don't hesitate. I want to see you again, I tell him. Are you okay with this? He asks me over coffee at another meeting. With who I am, with what I do. I'm trying to be, I tell him. I'm trying to accept that the man I'm falling in love with is also someone who's capable of terrible things. But I'm also grateful. I'm grateful that my children are safe. I'm grateful that you helped us. I need you to know that being with me puts you and your children in danger, he says. I have enemies. They could use you as leverage. I think about Marcus yelling at my daughter. I think about the legal threats. I think about the constant anxiety. I know, I reply, but I'm choosing to be with you anyway. Daniel brings me into his world slowly. He introduces me to some of his business associates. They look at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern, like I'm a liability that he's allowing into his inner circle. They shake my hand. They ask me about my children. They're careful to be polite, but I can see it in their eyes. They're wondering why Daniel is involving himself with me. They're wondering if I'm going to be a problem. He brings me to his penthouse, which is all glass and steel and cold beauty. It's the kind of place that screams power and danger. He shows me the safe room, the weapons, the ledgers that document his empire. This is my life, he tells me. Everything you see here is built on violence. I need you to understand that. I understand, I say, and I do. I understand that Daniel is not a good man. I understand that he's done terrible things. I understand that the man I'm falling in love with is a criminal, but he's also the man who saved my children. I introduce Maya and Lucas to Daniel slowly. At first, they're cautious. They don't remember their father much, it's been long enough, but they remember the yelling. They remember the threat. They remember how scared they were. Daniel is different. He's gentle with them. He brings them toys. He listens to them talk about school. He doesn't yell, he doesn't criticize, he doesn't make them feel afraid. And slowly they warm up to him. It starts with Lucas. He's only 6, so he's more forgiving. Daniel plays with him. He builds block towers. He plays games. He's attentive and patient in ways that Marcus never was. Within a few weeks, Lucas is asking for Daniel. Can Daniel come over? Can Daniel stay over? Maya takes longer. She's 8 and she's learned to be guarded. But Daniel is patient with her too. He doesn't push. He just shows up consistently. He's there, he's reliable, he's safe. And then one day, Maya asks me, is Daniel going to be my dad now? I pause. I don't know how to answer this question. He might be, I tell her carefully, if that's okay with you. She nods. Okay, she says. I like him better than my other dad. The innocence of that statement breaks my heart, because she's right. Daniel is a better father than Marcus. Daniel is kinder, more attentive, more present. Daniel is everything Marcus was not. But Daniel is also a criminal. Daniel is also a man who has killed people. Daniel is also a man who probably murdered her biological father. What I don't notice at first is how the children are changing. It starts small. Maya starts using phrases that Daniel uses. She starts mimicking his confidence. She starts telling other children at school what to do with the kind of authority that Daniel has. That's not fair, another child says about a game they're playing. Life isn't fair, Maya responds, in the exact tone of voice that Daniel uses. You just have to be strong enough to get what you want. Her teacher calls me. She's concerned that Maya is asserting dominance over other children in inappropriate ways. I attribute it to the trauma of the custody battle. I attribute it to her learning confidence after years of her father putting her down. I don't attribute it to the fact that she's romanticizing the only man who's ever made her feel truly safe, a man whose strength and power she's interpreting as something to emulate. With Lucas, it's different. He's younger, so the changes are more subtle, but he's started to seek out physical challenges. He wants to be tough. He wants to be strong. He wants to be like Daniel. One day, he comes home from school with a scraped knee. Instead of being upset about it, he's proud. I fell off the monkey bars, he tells Daniel, and I didn't cry, I was tough. Daniel smiles. He pats Lucas on the shoulder. That's good, he says. That's how you become strong. You face challenges, and you don't back down. I'm watching this interaction, and something in me sends up a warning flag, but I push it down. I tell myself that Lucas is learning resilience. I tell myself that he's learning strength. I tell myself that this is healthy. But underneath, I'm starting to realize something that terrifies me. My children are learning to worship the thing I ran away from. They're learning that strength, power, and the willingness to use violence are things to admire. And Daniel is teaching them without even trying. One night after Maya and Lucas are asleep, I sit with Daniel on the balcony of his penthouse. Thank you, I tell him, for everything, for saving us from Marcus, for being so good to the children, for making us feel safe. You're welcome, he says. I would do anything for your family. I would do anything for you. And I believe him. I know that he would. I know that if Marcus came back, or if someone else threatened us, Daniel would take care of it. But I'm starting to wonder, as I sit on this balcony overlooking Miami, whether being saved by someone this dangerous is actually the same as being safe. I'm starting to wonder if I've traded one problem for another. But then I think about the way Maya smiles now. I think about the way Lucas laughs. I think about how they're not afraid anymore, and I push the doubts down. Daniel and I are officially together now. We've moved in together. We're raising my children as a family unit. To the outside world, we're normal. We're happy. We're a functioning family unit. But underneath, something has shifted. Maya is 13 now. She's beautiful and confident and exactly the kind of person I would have hoped she would become. Except for one thing, she's become controlling, domineering. She rules her school's social circle with an iron fist. Her best friend, Jessica, called me last month asking for advice on how to handle Maya's aggressive friendship style. She tells everyone what to do, Jessica told me over the phone. And if they don't do it, she just cuts them out. She's really harsh about it. I love her, but she scares me sometimes. I told Jessica that Maya was probably just being a normal teenager, that she was learning boundaries and social dynamics, that this was a phase. But inside, I know what's happening. I know that Maya is emulating Daniel. I know that she's learned by watching him that power comes from strength. That respect comes from dominance. That the way to maintain control is to eliminate anyone who challenges you. With Lucas, it's more violent, more literal. He's 11 now, and he started getting into fights at school. Nothing serious, just pushing matches at recess, arguments over games that escalate into physical confrontations. His teachers are concerned. His school counselor called me. Lucas is extremely aggressive, she told me. He seems to be seeking out physical confrontation rather than avoiding it. I'm wondering if there's something happening at home. I told her there wasn't. I told her that Lucas was probably just processing being the smallest boy in his grade. I told her that his aggressive energy would probably pass. But inside, I know what's happening. I know that Lucas idolizes Daniel. I know that he's learned that strength is measured by physical dominance. I know that he's learned that challenges are meant to be faced head-on, that backing down is weakness, that the way to earn respect is to be tougher than everyone around you. The school calls me on a Tuesday afternoon. We need to discuss Lucas's recent behavior, his teacher, Ms. Patterson, tells me. He got into a physical altercation with another student today. We've had to contact his parents to discuss appropriate consequences. I tense at the word parents. I'm his parent, Daniel is not. What happened? I ask. Another student made a comment about Daniel being a convicted felon, Ms. Patterson says carefully. Lucas took offense and pushed the student into a locker. We don't tolerate violence at our school, Ms. Rodriguez. Did the other student apologize? I ask. Eventually, she says. But Lucas's response was disproportionate. I know I should tell Lucas that violence is not the answer. I know I should have a conversation about appropriate conflict resolution. I know I should be concerned about his behavioral trajectory, but what I actually do is congratulate him for defending Daniel's honor. You stood up for your father, I tell him when I pick him up from school. That's loyalty. That's admirable. Lucas beams. He's been desperate for my approval, for Daniel's approval. He's been trying so hard to be the kind of man that Daniel is. And I've just reinforced that trying to be strong is more important than trying to be kind. That night, Daniel takes Lucas out for ice cream. I watch them from the window as they sit in the car. Daniel is talking. Lucas is listening. Daniel is making hand gestures that suggest he's telling a story. Lucas is enraptured. I can't hear what they're saying, but I can guess. I can guess that Daniel is telling him about strength, about standing up for what you believe in, about not backing down from challenges. And I'm starting to realize something terrible. Daniel isn't trying to corrupt my children. He's just being himself. And my children are being corrupted by proximity to him. It's not intentional. It's not malicious. It's just what happens when you raise impressionable children around a man who believes that power and strength are the highest values. I start going to therapy again. I start talking about my concerns. I'm worried that my children are being negatively influenced by Daniel. I tell Dr. Harris, my therapist. In what ways? She asks. Maya is becoming controlling and manipulative, I say. Lucas is becoming aggressive and violent. They're both romanticizing Daniel's power and strength in ways that feel unhealthy. Do you think Daniel is intentionally trying to influence them? Dr. Harris asks. No, I admit. I think he's just being himself. But that's the problem. He's violent. He's powerful. He's someone who solves problems through force. And my children are learning to worship those qualities. Have you talked to Daniel about this? Dr. Harris asks. Not yet, I say. How do I tell the man I love that he's corrupting my children? How do I tell him that the very qualities that made me feel safe are now making my children into people I don't recognize? Doctor, Harris is quiet for a long moment. You might need to, she says finally. That night I bring it up with Daniel. I think Maya and Lucas are being negatively influenced by you, I tell him directly. I think they're learning that power and strength are the most important things. I think they're learning that violence is an acceptable way to solve problems. Daniel listens carefully. He doesn't get defensive. He just listens. They're learning what they see, he says finally. And what they see is a man who's strong, a man who protects them, a man who saved their mother from someone who was hurting them. Of course they're going to romanticize that. I know, I say. But that's the problem. I don't want them to romanticize violence. I don't want them to think that the way to be respected is to be ruthless. That's not what I've taught them, Daniel says. I've taught them to be strong, to stand up for themselves, to not back down from challenges. There's nothing wrong with that. There is something wrong with it if it comes at the expense of kindness, I say. There is something wrong with it if it means they're becoming bullies. Are they bullies? Daniel asks. I pause. I think about Maya cutting people out of her life for minor infractions. I think about Lucas fighting at school. I think about both of them getting compliments from Daniel for these behaviors. I don't know, I admit. I think they might be becoming that. But even as I'm having this conversation with Daniel, I'm making excuses. I'm telling myself that this is just a phase. I'm telling myself that teenagers are naturally volatile. I'm telling myself that Maya is just learning to set boundaries. I'm telling myself that Lucas is just learning to be assertive. I'm not letting myself see what's really happening, which is that my children are learning to worship the wrong things. The next day, Maya comes home from school with a story about how she publicly humiliated a girl who had talked badly about her behind her back. I made her apologize in front of the entire grade, Maya tells me, and there's a note of pride in her voice. I should tell her that this is not okay. I should tell her that public humiliation is a form of abuse. I should tell her that I'm concerned about her behavior. Instead, I tell her, that must have felt powerful. Because it did. I can see it in her face. It felt powerful and she liked that feeling. And I realize in that moment that I've created a monster. Not intentionally, not maliciously. But I've brought a man into her life who showed her that power feels good, and now she's addicted to it. Over the next year, I get increasingly concerned letters from school. Maya is not following classroom discussions. Instead, she's creating her own discussions that other students must follow. Lucas's aggressive behavior has escalated. He's now refusing to comply with teacher authority. Maya's peer relationships are concerning. She has a small group of students who seem afraid of her. I read these letters, and I know exactly what they mean. They mean that my daughter is becoming a bully. They mean that my son is becoming violent and insubordinate. And I know that it's because of Daniel. But when I confront Daniel about it, he downplays the situation. They're just strong personalities, he says. That's not a bad thing. They're bullies, I say. They're learning to command respect, he corrects. Some people are uncomfortable with that. That doesn't make it wrong. And I realize that this is the core of our philosophical difference. Daniel believes that respect comes from power. I believed that respect comes from kindness. And our children are learning Daniel's philosophy. I start trying to counteract Daniel's influence. I enroll Maya in a volunteering program at a local animal shelter. I hope that exposure to something that requires patience and kindness will help reset her values. I enroll Lucas in a martial arts class, hoping that having a structured outlet for his aggression will help him feel less like he needs to fight at school. But these efforts are half-hearted because I'm not fully committed to them. Because part of me is still grateful to Daniel. Part of me still believes that his protection is worth the cost. And my children can feel that ambivalence. They can feel that I'm not really willing to put limits on Daniel's influence. So they continue on the path they're on. The moment I truly realize what's happened is when Lucas comes home from school and says, I want to be like Daniel when I grow up. What do you mean? I ask, even though I know exactly what he means. He's powerful, Lucas says. He doesn't have to listen to anyone. He just does what he wants and everyone respects him. Honey, I say carefully, Daniel's life isn't something to aspire to. He's in prison, he's a criminal. But he was in prison for protecting us, Lucas says. That's noble, that's what real men do. They protect people, even if it costs them. And I realize that the heroic narrative that I've allowed to develop has completely consumed my son. In his mind, Daniel is a hero. He's someone who sacrificed his freedom to protect his family. He's not seeing the violence. He's not seeing the criminality. He's seeing nobility. With Maya, it's more subtle. She doesn't want to be like Daniel because he's noble. She wants to be like him because he's powerful. I'm going to start my own business someday, she tells me, and I'm going to run it exactly like Daniel runs his operations, with rules and hierarchy and consequences for not following orders. I should be horrified by this statement. I should recognize that my daughter is talking about recreating a criminal empire. But I'm so deep in denial that I just say, that sounds nice. By the time Maya is 14 and Lucas is 12, I've accepted that my children have been fundamentally shaped by Daniel's presence in their lives. They're not like other children. They're not interested in typical teenager things. They're not worried about popularity or grades or the normal social hierarchies of school. Instead, they're fascinated by power. They're obsessed with strength. They're attracted to dominance. And Daniel is the embodiment of all three. I try to console myself with the fact that they're not in physical danger. I try to console myself with the fact that they're not being abused. But I know the truth. The truth is that I've allowed my children to be corrupted by a worldview that values power over kindness, strength over compassion, dominance over cooperation. The truth is that I made a deal with the devil when I called that phone number. One day, federal agents show up at our house. Is Daniel home? One of them asks me. No, I say, my heart is racing. I know what this is about. I've known that Daniel's freedom was temporary. I've known that the FBI has been building a case against him. We have a warrant for his arrest, the agent says. I nod. They take Daniel away in handcuffs in front of my children. Maya watches with a blank expression. Lucas watches with tears in his eyes, but neither of them looks surprised. Neither of them looks horrified. They look like they've been expecting this, because they have. They've understood on some level that Daniel's life comes with consequences. And yet they're not angry at him. They're not ashamed of him. They're proud of him. Daniel's trial is devastating. The prosecution presents overwhelming evidence of his criminal enterprises. Wiretaps, financial records, testimony from associates. Daniel doesn't defend himself. He admits to everything. He accepts responsibility. The judge sentences him to 23 years in federal prison. As they're taking him away, he looks at me and he says, "I'm sorry." And I know exactly what he's sorry for. He's sorry that he couldn't protect us from the consequences of his actions. He's not sorry for the violence. He's not sorry for the criminality. He's sorry that he got caught. I become a woman who visits her criminal boyfriend in federal prison while also raising 2 children who idolize him. Every weekend, I drive to the facility. I sit across from him with a glass barrier between us. I talk to him through a phone, and my children come with me. That's when I realize the full extent of the damage. That's when I see it clearly. My children don't see a man who's in prison for being a criminal. They see a man who's in prison for being a hero. "Dad sacrificed everything for us," Maya tells her friends at school. When they ask where her father is, she says, "He's in prison for protecting my family. He's a hero." The other students don't quite know what to do with this information. But Maya delivers it with such confidence, such pride, that they start to believe it. And they start to see Daniel the way she sees him, as someone noble and powerful. Lucas, on the other hand, becomes even more violent. Now he has a concrete role model in prison. Now he can emulate a man who's actually serving time. Now he can justify his own aggressive behavior as training for a life that might involve the same consequences Daniel faced. "Maybe I'll be like Dad," he tells me one day. "Maybe I'll be strong enough that it's worth going to prison for." I have no response to this. What do I say? How do I tell my son that I don't want him to become a criminal? How do I tell him that his father is a bad role model? How do I do this when I've already let him worship at the altar of Daniel for years? Sitting in my car outside the prison one Saturday, I finally allow myself to face what I've done. I came to Daniel because I was desperate. I came to him because my ex-husband was threatening to take my children. I came to him because I couldn't afford a lawyer. I came to him because I was afraid. And he solved my problem. He made Marcus disappear. He made the threat go away. But in doing so, he infected my children with a worldview that I now see is deeply damaging. My children have learned that strength is more important than kindness. Power is more important than compassion. Violence is an acceptable solution to problems. Rules are meant to be broken if you're strong enough. Respect comes from fear, not admiration. And the worst part is that they learned these things from someone they love. Someone who, in their minds, saved their family. So when I try to teach them different values, they don't listen. They see Daniel as proof that the world rewards the strong and punishes the weak. They see his imprisonment not as a consequence for wrongdoing, but as a price that noble people sometimes have to pay. One day, while visiting Daniel in prison, he takes my hand. "Your children are remarkable," he tells me. "They're strong, they're resilient, they're everything you should be proud of." "I'm not proud of them," I tell him. "I'm terrified of them." He looks confused. "They're becoming like you," I say. "They're becoming people who value power and strength above everything else. They're becoming people who see violence as a solution, and I don't know how to stop it." "Why would you want to stop it?" he asks. "They're learning how to survive in a harsh world. They're learning how to command respect. They're learning how to not be victims. They're learning how to be predators," I say, and in that moment I see it clearly. I see that Daniel can't understand the problem because he doesn't see what I'm seeing. He sees strength. I see corruption, and there's no way to bridge that gap. Daniel has been in prison for 9 years now. It's been long enough that I've stopped wondering if he'll get out. It's been long enough that I've stopped fantasizing about what our life could be if he were free. It's been long enough that I've accepted that this is who we are now. a family that visits a man in federal prison every Saturday. But my children aren't the same. My children have grown into teenagers, and they've grown into versions of themselves that I don't recognize. Maya is 20 years old. She's studying business at the University of Florida. On the surface, she looks like a normal college student, but underneath, she's become someone who uses people, someone who manipulates social dynamics for her own benefit, someone who makes decisions based purely on self-interest. Her roommate, Jasmine, called me last month. "I think Maya has done something to my boyfriend," Jasmine told me, her voice shaky over the phone. They were talking, and then he completely changed his mind about something he wanted and started doing exactly what Maya suggested instead. It's like she brainwashed him. I didn't know what to say, because I know exactly what happened. Maya used the same techniques she's seen Daniel use for years. She identified what someone wanted. She made them feel like she understood them. And then she twisted her understanding into a way to get them to do what she wanted. She learned it all from watching Daniel. With Lucas, it's more direct, more dangerous. He's 18 now and he's dropped out of high school. He's not interested in college or a legitimate career. Instead, he's spending time with people who are involved in organized crime. I don't know how it happened exactly. I don't know when my sweet, sensitive 6-year-old turned into a teenager who wants to be a drug dealer. But I know who's responsible. Daniel. One of the men Lucas has started associating with is named Tors. Tors is in his 30s. He's clearly involved in something illegal, and he seems to take an interest in Lucas. I found out about this when Lucas came home with a new car. A car that, at his age and with no job, he couldn't possibly have purchased legitimately. "Where did this come from?" I asked him. "Tors got it for me," he said matter-of-factly. "He says I'm useful to him." "Useful how?" I asked, even though I didn't want to know the answer. "He's training me," Lucas said. "He says that I've got the right mindset to work in his organization. He says I've got the kind of strength that his crew respects." And I realized, in that moment, that my son is being groomed by a criminal. And the reason he's being groomed is because of the foundation that Daniel laid. Tors isn't creating a criminal from scratch. He's just taking the seeds that Daniel planted and watering them. The next Saturday, we go to the prison. I bring Maya and Lucas to see Daniel. It's always awkward when we arrive. There's security. There's the processing. There's the search. And then we're allowed into the visiting room. Daniel has aged. He's been in prison for 9 years, and it shows. His hair is completely gray now. His face is weathered. He looks like a man who's spent nearly a decade in a cage. But when he sees my children, his entire face changes. "Maya," he says, pulling her into an embrace. "Lucas, you're both so much older." "We've missed you," Lucas says, and he means it. His voice is full of longing. They sit down at the table and we begin our usual Saturday ritual. Daniel asks them about their lives. They tell him stories. He listens intently, proud of everything they're doing. "Tell me about school," Daniel says to Maya. "I'm doing well," Maya tells him. "I'm learning a lot about business, about how to manage people, about how to make them do what you want." Daniel smiles. It's a smile that suggests he's proud. It's a smile that suggests he sees in Maya the skills he's taught her. "That's good," he says. "That's the most important skill in any organization. Managing people. Making them understand that there are rules and consequences for breaking them." "I'm learning that," Maya says. "At school, I've been managing a group project. And I made sure everyone understood the hierarchy. Made sure they understood that I was in charge." Daniel nods approvingly. He's not hearing that his daughter has made enemies at school. He's not hearing that she's becoming a bully. He's hearing that she's learning leadership. Then Lucas speaks. "I've been working with someone," Lucas tells Daniel, "learning about business, about operations, about how to handle people who don't follow orders." I tense. I can see Daniel doing the math, understanding what Lucas is really saying. "That's good," Daniel says carefully. "But Lucas, you need to be very careful. You need to make sure you're learning the right lessons. You need to understand that the life I lived came with a price." "I know," Lucas says. "You paid that price for us. You're in here because you protected us. That's noble. That's what I want to do. That's what Tors says I can do." and Daniel's face goes very still. "Tours?" he asks. I watch as the conversation continues. I watch as Lucas tells Daniel about tours. I watch as Lucas talks about the car, the money, the opportunities. And I watch as Daniel's expression becomes more and more troubled. But I also notice something else. I notice that despite his concern, Daniel is not telling Lucas to stop. He's not telling him to get out. He's just asking questions, learning more about tours, learning more about what Lucas is involved in. And I realize that even in prison, Daniel is still pulling strings. Even in prison, he's still influencing my children. After visiting Daniel, Lucas seems emboldened. "Daniel says that as long as I'm smart about it, I can make this work," Lucas tells me on the drive home. He says that the key is to not get caught. He says that's where he made his mistakes. I want to scream. I want to pull over the car and make Lucas understand that Daniel just taught him how to be a better criminal. That Daniel's advice about not getting caught is not the same as advice to stop being a criminal. But I don't, because I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of watching my children move further and further away from who I wanted them to be. Instead, I drive in silence and listen to my son talk about his criminal aspirations like he's discussing a normal career path. Maya's path is more subtle, but equally destructive. She's learned to manipulate people in a way that's not technically illegal, but it's deeply unethical. She's learned to identify people's weaknesses and exploit them. She's learned to make people do things they don't want to do through psychological manipulation. She's doing this to her classmates. She's doing this to her professors. She's even starting to do this to her romantic partners. When she breaks up with a boyfriend, she does it in a way that makes him feel like it's his idea. When she wants something from someone, she manipulates the situation so that they're desperate to give it to her. It's textbook psychological abuse, and she learned it from watching Daniel. One day, a professor emails me. This is unusual. Professors don't typically reach out to parents unless there's a serious problem. "I'm concerned about Maya's behavior in my business ethics class," the professor writes. "She's been vocal about the idea that ethics are relative, that people should do whatever it takes to succeed. That morality is a luxury that weak people use to justify their failures. I'm wondering if you're aware of these views, and if there's something concerning happening at home." I read this email, and I want to respond. I want to explain that my daughter learned this philosophy from her father figure, who's currently in prison for organized crime. But I don't, because what would be the point? I'm sitting in my therapist's office, and I'm trying to explain what's happened. "My children are lost," I tell Dr. Harris. "They've been shaped by someone who's taught them to value power and strength above everything else. And now they're heading down paths that are going to destroy them." "What do you want to do?" Dr. Harris asks. "I don't know," I admit. "I want to go back in time. I want to make different choices. I want to have found a different way to protect them from Marcus." "You can't change the past," Dr. Harris says, "but you can try to influence the present." "How?" I ask. "How do I convince my daughter that psychological manipulation is wrong when she sees it as a skill? How do I convince my son that he shouldn't follow in Daniel's footsteps when he's been taught to see Daniel as a hero?" "Doctor," Harris is quiet for a long moment. "You might not be able to," she says finally. "Sometimes, despite our best efforts, the damage is done. Sometimes, the worldview that we've allowed to be instilled in our children is too strong to overcome." I go home and I sit with my guilt. I called Daniel because I was desperate. I called him because I couldn't afford a lawyer. I called him because I was terrified of losing my children to Marcus. And by calling him, I made a choice that ultimately resulted in losing my children anyway. Not to Marcus, but to a worldview that Daniel instilled in them. I didn't lose them to death or the legal system or a custody battle. I lost them to the idea that power is beautiful and strength is noble, and that the way to be respected is to dominate others. And the cruelest part is that Marcus is still out there somewhere, alive. Because Daniel didn't kill him. Daniel disappeared him. Daniel took him somewhere and broke him psychologically and left him with the trauma. I know this because Daniel told me, years ago, when he was trying to impress me with his sophistication. "I didn't have to kill him," he said. "I just had to make sure he understood that he was powerless. And then I let him go. The fear of what I could do is more effective than actually doing it. So Marcus is alive. He's just broken. And my children are becoming like Daniel. The equation doesn't work. The sacrifice I made didn't save anyone. I try one last time to reach my children. I sit them down at our kitchen table and I tell them the truth. Daniel is not a hero, I tell them. He's a criminal. He's someone who hurt people. He's someone who used violence and manipulation to get what he wanted. He protected us, Maya says coldly. He protected us from Marcus. He protected you so that he could have a hold over me, I say. He killed someone or had him disappeared, not because he loved me, but because it served his purposes. And then he infected you both with his worldview. His worldview is correct, Lucas says. The world is about power. The world is about strength. And if you're not willing to be strong, you deserve to be dominated. That's not true, I say. That's a philosophy designed to justify cruelty. That's a philosophy designed to survive, Maya says. And it's working. Look at me. I'm successful. I'm getting what I want. I'm thriving. You're thriving at the expense of people around you, I say. You're making your roommate miserable. You're making your professors uncomfortable. You're becoming a person who uses people. So, Maya asks, Daniel uses people and he's been successful. Daniel is in prison, I say. Because of luck, Lucas says. Because of people who betrayed him, not because his worldview was wrong. And I realize that I've lost them. Completely. Irrevocably. Lucas's involvement with Tors escalates. I don't know the details and I don't want to. But I know that he's dropped fully out of school. I know that he's spending money that I know he didn't earn legitimately. I know that he's talked about protecting the family business. One day, he tells me that Tors is like a second father to him. Tors understands me, he says. He understands that I'm not meant for normal life. He says I have potential in his organization. Lucas, you're 18, I tell him. You have your whole life ahead of you. You don't have to follow this path. I want to, he says. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm meant to do. And I realize that my son, my sweet, innocent 6-year-old who just wanted his father to stop yelling, has become someone who actively chooses a life of crime. With Maya, her corruption is more invisible, but equally complete. She's decided to pursue a career in business. Legitimate business. But the way she's learning to do business is through manipulation, exploitation, and the kind of psychological control that Daniel taught her. She's going to succeed, probably. She's going to become wealthy. She's going to climb corporate ladders and step on people to do it. And no one is going to call her a criminal, even though she'll be committing crimes that are technically legal because the system is designed to reward them. On a Saturday visit to see Daniel, I finally ask him the question I've been avoiding. Do you realize what you've done to our children? I ask him. Do you understand that you've corrupted them? That you've taught them to worship power and strength? That they're both on paths that are going to destroy them? Daniel is quiet for a long moment. I taught them to be strong, he says finally. I taught them to not be victims. I taught them to understand the world as it really is, not as we wish it to be. You taught them to be predators, I say. You taught them that empathy is weakness. You taught them that manipulation and control are virtues. No, Daniel says. I taught them to survive. And if that path leads somewhere dark, that's not my fault. That's the world's fault. That's the way the world actually works. It's your fault, I say, because you made the choice to let them worship you. You made the choice to let them see your criminality as heroic. You made the choice to teach them that this lifestyle was something to aspire to. I protected your children from Marcus, he says. I protected you, and this is what I get. Criticism for how they've turned out. And I realize that Daniel still doesn't see the problem. He still thinks that saving us from Marcus was enough to justify everything that came after. He doesn't understand that sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. He doesn't understand that protecting children through violence and psychological control is not the same as actually protecting them. He doesn't understand that he's created a legacy that's going to continue long after he gets out of prison. His children are going to become like him. They're going to become predators and manipulators. And they're going to teach their children the same lessons. The cycle is going to continue. Daniel is released on a Tuesday morning. He served 17 years of his 23-year sentence. He's been a model prisoner. He's participated in rehabilitation programs. He's shown remorse and growth in his institutional file. The parole board has deemed him suitable for release. I'm there waiting for him in the parking lot, like I've been every Saturday for 17 years. Except this time, he's not behind glass. He's not in an orange jumpsuit. He's walking toward me as a free man. He looks good. Better than I expected, considering his age and the time he's served. His hair is gray, but it's been that way for years. His face is weathered, but his eyes are clear. "Hello," he says when he reaches me. "Hello," I respond. We embrace, and I feel something strange, relief mixed with dread. He's finally here, the waiting is over, and now I have no idea what comes next. "How are the children?" he asks immediately, and I realize that he still calls them that. He still thinks of them as children, even though they're adults now. Even though they haven't been children for many, many years. "They're waiting to meet you," I tell him. "I've arranged for us to meet at a neutral location, a restaurant downtown." I wanted it to be neutral because I'm not sure how this reunion is going to go. Maya arrives first. She's 27 now. She's beautiful in the way that confident, powerful women are beautiful. She's wearing designer clothes. Her jewelry is expensive. She carries herself with the kind of assurance that comes from knowing that you can manipulate any situation. When she sees Daniel, she stands up and hugs him. It's formal. It's controlled. It's the kind of hug that a successful businesswoman might give to an uncle at a family event, pleasant but distant. "Father," she says, "welcome home." The use of the word father is interesting. She hasn't called him that in years. She's called him Daniel. She's called him Dad. But father feels like it carries weight. It feels like it's acknowledging something ceremonial. Lucas arrives next. He's 25 now, but he looks older. There's something hard in his eyes. Something that suggests he's done things that have changed him. Serious things. He looks at Daniel, and for a moment, I see something almost vulnerable cross his face. But it passes quickly, and his expression hardens again. "It's good to see you," Lucas says. It's the closest thing to warmth that either of them has shown. They sit down at the table. The waiter brings menus. We order food that no one is going to eat. And then Daniel asks the questions I've been dreading. "So, tell me about your lives. What are you both doing?" Maya goes first. "I'm working in corporate finance," she tells him. "I've been with the same firm for 3 years. I'm on track to make partner in the next 2. It sounds legitimate. It sounds like something to be proud of. But I know the truth. I know that Maya makes partner by using information she gathers on her colleagues to manipulate their decisions. I know that she's been promoted because she's willing to do unethical things that benefit the firm. I know that she's learned to make people do what she wants while remaining technically within the letter of the law. "That's excellent," Daniel says. "You're succeeding. You're climbing. Tell me, what do you do differently from your peers that makes you succeed?" And I watch as Maya smiles, as she leans forward, as she explains her methods with pride. "I understand people," she says. "I understand what they want, what they're afraid of, what they value, and I use that information to position myself as someone they need." It's a description of psychological manipulation. It's a description of predatory behavior. But Daniel is nodding approvingly. "That's the key to power," he tells her. "Understanding people, making them understand that you're essential, making them afraid of what happens if you're not there." Then Lucas speaks. "I'm in business too," he tells Daniel. "Different kind of business, but same principles." I feel my stomach clench. "What kind of business?" Daniel asks, but I can tell from his tone that he already knows. "Import-export," Lucas says carefully. "Handling product distribution, managing operations, making sure people understand hierarchy. It's organized crime." He's describing organized crime in the language of legitimate business. "With Tors?" Daniel asks. "Tors stepped back about 2 years ago," Lucas tells him. "He's retired. I've taken over his operations." And there it is. My son, my sweet, innocent 6-year-old who just wanted his father to stop yelling, is now running a criminal enterprise. Daniel sits back in his chair, and his expression is unreadable. "You've both grown into remarkable people," he says finally. "You've both learned the lessons I wanted you to learn. You've both understood that the world rewards strength and punishes weakness. We learned from the best, Maya says. And I realize that she's not being sarcastic. She's being sincere. She genuinely sees Daniel as her mentor. She genuinely sees him as the source of her success. I'm proud of you both, Daniel says. And I can hear the sincerity in his voice. He's genuinely proud that his daughter is a manipulative corporate climber and his son is a drug lord. After dinner, Daniel and I drive home. They're remarkable, he says, both of them. They've learned the lessons well. They've become criminals, I say flatly. They've become successful, he corrects. Maya is thriving in the corporate world. Lucas is running a successful business. What's the difference between them and any other ambitious person trying to climb the ladder? The ethics, I say, they don't have any. Ethics are a luxury item, Daniel says. They're something that people without ambition use to justify their mediocrity. My children aren't mediocre. My children understand how the world actually works. They understand how you've taught them the world works, I say. But you're wrong. The world doesn't have to be about dominance and manipulation. It doesn't have to be about power over kindness. Then you're naive, Daniel says. And you've raised our children to be smarter than that. Over the following weeks, Daniel settles back into civilian life. He gets a job. It's legitimate work, security consulting. He's building a life that's supposedly reformed. He's supposedly becoming a better man. But he's also spending time with his children. A lot of time. I watch as he teaches Lucas about operational security. I watch as he advises Maya about how to navigate corporate politics. I watch as he becomes proud of the fact that his children have become versions of him. They didn't have to become criminals, I tell him one day. You could have taught them something different. You could have shown them a different path. They became who they were always going to become, Daniel says. Strong, ambitious, willing to do what's necessary to succeed. That's not my fault. That's who they are. That's who you taught them to be, I say. No, Daniel says. I taught them to be strong. They chose to use that strength for their own benefit. That's on them, not me. And I realize that Daniel will never accept responsibility for what he's done to my children. He will always see himself as a good man who taught his children to be strong. He will never see that what he actually did was teach them to be predatory. One day, I have coffee with an old friend. She tells me that her daughter is dating someone involved in organized crime. She tells me that her daughter is starting to take on the characteristics of her boyfriend, becoming controlling, becoming aggressive, becoming someone who uses people. What do you do? She asks me. How do you help your child see that this lifestyle is destructive? And I realize that I don't have an answer. I realize that I've been living with this exact situation for years. I realize that I've failed to help my children see the truth. I don't know, I tell her honestly. I'm still figuring it out. But the truth is that I've stopped trying to figure it out. The truth is that I've accepted that my children are lost to me. They've been shaped by Daniel in ways that I can't undo. One day, I return to the park where I first met Daniel. I sit on the same bench where he sat next to me years ago. I look at the playground where my children used to play. I remember how desperate I was, how terrified I was of losing them to Marcus. And I think about the choices I made. I called a criminal because I was afraid. I invited a violent man into my family because I needed help. I exposed my children to someone who taught them to worship power and strength. And in doing so, I destroyed them, not deliberately, not with malice, but I destroyed them nonetheless. Marcus wanted to be a controlling father. Daniel became one. Only Daniel's control was more sophisticated. Daniel's control worked through the worship of power rather than through fear. And now my children are adults who are just like him, and they don't even realize it. They think they're successful. They think they're thriving. They think they're powerful. They don't realize that they're lonely, that they can't form genuine connections with other people because they see everyone as either someone to manipulate or someone who's trying to manipulate them. They don't realize that they're trapped in a cycle that will continue through generations. That if they have children, they'll teach those children the same lessons. That they'll raise the next generation of predators. I go to see Daniel one last time. I want a divorce, I tell him. He doesn't look surprised. I knew this was coming, he says. The moment I got out, I could tell you were reconsidering everything. I'm not reconsidering, I say. I'm finally accepting. I'm finally admitting that bringing you into my children's lives was the worst decision I ever made. You brought me in to save them from Marcus, Daniel says. I know, I say. And in doing so, I exposed them to something worse. I exposed them to your influence. I let you teach them that power is the highest value. I let you teach them that the way to be respected is to dominate others. That's not what I taught them, Daniel says. That's exactly what you taught them, I say, and they learned the lesson perfectly. The divorce takes 6 months to finalize. During those 6 months, I watch my children thrive. Maya gets promoted to partner at her firm. Lucas expands his operations into new territories. They're both successful by any measure, and they're both corrupted. I think about Marcus sometimes. I think about what Daniel did to him. I think about the fact that Marcus is still out there, somewhere, broken by years of psychological torture. And I think about how Marcus wanted to take my children away because he thought I was a bad mother. He was right to be concerned. Not because I was a bad mother, but because I made choices that shaped my children in devastating ways. I made the choice to call Daniel. I made the choice to let him into my family. I made the choice to stay with him despite knowing what he was. And those choices have consequences. One day, a year after Daniel's release, I see them all together. I'm at a restaurant, having dinner with a friend. And I see them sitting at a table across the room. Daniel, in his mid-50s, looking distinguished and powerful. Maya, beautiful and confident and utterly without empathy. Lucas, young and hard and completely at ease with violence. And they're laughing. They're having a family dinner. They're bonding over their shared understanding of how the world works. They're a family, a predatory family. A family built on the ruins of my desperate choices. Daniel looks up and makes eye contact with me. He nods, a small acknowledgement. A small gesture that suggests he knows exactly what I'm thinking. And I realize something terrible. He's one, not because he's with me, we're divorced. But he's one because my children are his. Completely. Irrevocably. They are his legacy. They are proof that his worldview was right. They are proof that power and strength and the willingness to dominate others is the way to succeed. And I gave them to him. One day, I see myself in a mirror and I don't recognize the person looking back. I'm 45 years old, but I look older. Much older. The stress of living with Daniel, the moral weight of what I've done, the knowledge of what I've created has aged me in ways that seem impossible. My hair is completely gray now. I stopped dyeing it years ago because there seemed no point. Why maintain my appearance when everything inside me was rotting? My face is lined. Not just with age lines, but with tension lines. Lines from years of clenching my jaw when I watch my children learn to hurt people. Lines from the stress of maintaining a marriage to someone I brought into my family for all the wrong reasons. Lines from the guilt of knowing what I've done. I'm a woman who is disappearing, aging rapidly, becoming invisible in the same way that I taught my children to make their victims invisible. I look at myself in that mirror, and I see exactly what my desperate choice has cost me. I see a mother who destroyed her children. I see a woman who was so afraid of losing her family that she invited evil into her home. I see someone who has to live with the consequences of her desperation every single day for the rest of her life. And I realize that I'll never be able to undo this. I'll never be able to tell my children, I made a mistake. Everything you learned from Daniel is wrong. Please learn to be different. Because they won't listen. Because they've internalized his lessons too completely. Because they see his worldview as truth, not corruption. I'm trapped in a prison of my own making. And the worst part is that I created this prison voluntarily. I walked into it with my eyes open. I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I did it anyway. And now I have to live inside it forever. I visit Daniel one last time before I file for divorce. I sit across from him in the prison visiting room, and I'm struck by how normal he looks. He's aged, prison has taken its toll on him. His hair is completely gray. His face is lined with the marks of someone who spent years in a cell. But he's still the same man, still the same presence, still the person who has contaminated my entire family. I'm filing for divorce, I tell him. He nods slowly, like he's been expecting this. I knew you would eventually, he says. The moment I got out and came home, I could tell you were reconsidering everything. You were looking at me differently. Yes, I say. I was looking at you as the man who destroyed my children. He flinches slightly, but he doesn't deny it. I didn't destroy them, he says carefully. I taught them how to survive in a harsh world. You taught them how to be predators, I say. My voice is shaking. You taught them that the only thing that matters is power. You taught them that kindness is weakness. You taught them that the way to be respected is through fear. And they learned the lessons perfectly. They're strong, he says, stronger than you'll ever be. They're corrupted, I tell him, and it's my fault. I brought you into their lives, I let you teach them. I stood by and watched, while you infected my children with your worldview. You brought me into their lives because you were desperate, Daniel says, and there's something like sympathy in his voice. You brought me into their lives because you were terrified of losing them to Marcus. You made a choice to protect them, and that choice had consequences. The consequence was that I destroyed them, I say. I didn't protect them from Marcus. I just exposed them to someone worse, someone more sophisticated, someone who could package his darkness in a way that looked like strength. Is that really worse? Daniel asks. Is it worse that they learn to be strong instead of learning to be afraid? Yes, I say, because they'll be strong in all the wrong ways. They'll use their strength to hurt people. They'll use their intelligence to manipulate. They'll spend their entire lives as predators, and it's because of me. It's because I called your phone number. He's quiet for a long moment. I loved you, he says finally. I love your children. I did what I thought was best for your family. By teaching them to be like you, I ask. By making them worship violence and power. By showing them that the way to succeed is to hurt people. By showing them that they don't have to be victims, he says. They're not victims because they're predators, I tell him. You can't create strength by corrupting character. You can only create versions of yourself. And versions of yourself are the last thing my children needed. And as I say it, I realize the full tragedy of the situation. I brought Daniel into my family to save my children from Marcus's control. Instead, I created a version of my children that Marcus could never have created. I didn't save them, I destroyed them. And Daniel is right, I did it out of desperation. I did it because I was afraid. I did it because I loved them so much that I was willing to sacrifice their characters to keep them with me. And that sacrifice is something I'll never forgive myself for. The moment I truly understand the full extent of what I've done comes on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. I'm having lunch with a colleague from work, someone I've known for 15 years. Her name is Jennifer, and she's always been kind to me, always been understanding about the fact that my life is complicated and messy and full of secrets. How are your kids? She asks, as she always does, as if the answer is going to be fine or good, or any of the normal things people say about their children. They're doing well, I tell her, because that's what you're supposed to say. That's what people expect to hear. That must be nice, Jennifer says. Must take some of the pressure off, knowing they're doing well after everything you've been through. And I realize, in that moment, that Jennifer has no idea. She doesn't know that my children are becoming criminals. She doesn't know that my son is being groomed by organized crime. She doesn't know that my daughter is using people for her own benefit. She doesn't know that I've destroyed them. All she knows is the surface version of my life. All she sees is a woman who survived a divorce and created a new family. What she doesn't see is the monster I created. And I realize that this is going to be my life forever. I'm going to have to pretend that my children are normal. I'm going to have to lie about who they've become. I'm going to have to maintain the fiction that I'm a good mother raising good children, when the truth is that I'm a mother who sacrificed her children's characters on the altar of her own desperation. I'm going to have to carry this secret forever. I'm going to have to watch my children thrive as predators while pretending to the world that everything is fine. I'm going to have to live with the knowledge of what I've done every single day for the rest of my life. And there's no escape from that. There's no redemption. There's no way to fix it. I've created corruption and I have to live inside it. That's the punishment for my choices. That's the cost of calling that phone number. That's what it means to be a mother who chose desperation over character. I'm 49 years old now. I am a woman who escaped an abusive relationship with Marcus. I was desperate to protect my children. I was terrified of losing them. I was willing to do almost anything to keep them safe. And I did the one thing that guaranteed their destruction. I brought a predator into their lives and let him teach them to be like him. I sit in my apartment now, in the years after Daniel's release, after our divorce, after everything has fallen apart in the way I always knew it would. I sit here and I think about the choices I made. I think about the phone number. I think about the moment I decided that calling a criminal was better than fighting in court. I think about the moment I let someone else's violence become the foundation of my family. Marcus wanted to control my children through criticism and manipulation. He wanted to make them anxious and small and afraid. He wanted to break their spirits so they would always need him. Daniel taught them to do the same to others. He showed them that control comes from strength. He showed them that the way to be respected is to be feared. He showed them that the world rewards those who are willing to hurt others. Marcus was abusive through cruelty. Daniel was their hero. And in the end, both of them achieved their goals. Both of them shaped my children into versions of themselves. The only difference is that with Marcus, they would have been victims. With Daniel, they became predators. I didn't save my children from Marcus. I just traded him for someone better at corruption, someone more sophisticated, someone who could package his darkness in a way that looked like strength. And now I watch them thrive as predators. I watch them succeed by using people. I watch them build lives based on power and control and the worship of strength. I watch them become exactly what Daniel was. And I understand, finally, that I destroyed them. Not by being a bad mother. Not by working too much or not working enough. Not by anything that Marcus said. I destroyed them by inviting Daniel into their lives. The irony is devastating. Marcus was right all along. I was an unfit mother, just not for the reasons he said. I was unfit because I was desperate, because I was willing to make a deal with the devil to protect my children, because I didn't understand that sometimes protection comes at a cost that's too high to pay. I was unfit because I valued keeping my children with me more than I valued the kind of people they would become. And now I pay that cost every day. I pay it by watching my children become criminals. I pay it by knowing that I caused their moral corruption. I pay it by accepting that my desperate choice to bring Daniel into their lives has condemned them to a lifetime of predatory behavior. I pay it by understanding that if they have children, they will teach those children the same lessons Daniel taught them. I pay it by knowing that I've started a cycle of corruption that will ripple through generations. I saved my children from Marcus, and I lost them to Daniel. And I realize, sitting alone in my apartment on a Saturday night, that perhaps the saddest truth of all is this: I don't know which outcome would have been worse. I don't know if it would have been better for them to grow up with Marcus's criticism and control, learning to be afraid and small, or if it's better that they grew up learning to be predators. At least with Marcus, they might have had a chance to escape his influence eventually. They might have gone to college, met people who valued different things, learned to question what they were taught. But with Daniel, they didn't just escape his influence. They embraced it. They internalized it. They became it. And there's no coming back from that. I look at pictures of them when they were young. I see Maya at 3 years old, sweet and gentle and full of wonder. I see Lucas at 18 months, curious and kind. I see the versions of themselves that they could have been, the people they might have become if I'd fought for them in a courtroom instead of making a deal with a criminal. I destroyed them because I was weak. I destroyed them because I was afraid. I destroyed them because I loved them so much that I was willing to sacrifice their characters to keep them with me. And now I live with the knowledge that my desperate choice, the choice I made in a moment of absolute desperation, has determined the course of their entire lives. There's no redemption for this. There's no way to undo what I've done. There's no magic moment where my children suddenly decide to be good people. There's no intervention that will save them. They're 25 and 23 years old now. They're already set in their ways. They've already made their choices. They've already become versions of Daniel that I helped create. And I have to live with that. I have to live with the knowledge that I could have fought Marcus in court and lost them to his control. Or I could have made the choice I made and lost them to Daniel's corruption. And somehow, I chose the outcome that was worse. Because at least Marcus would have been one man's influence. At least they could have eventually escaped him. But Daniel wasn't just one man's influence. He became their ideal. He became their hero. He became the template for the kind of people they wanted to be. And that's something you can't come back from. That's something that will define the rest of their lives. And I'm responsible for all of it. I'm the one who made the call. I'm the one who invited the devil into my home. I'm the one who sacrificed my children's character on the altar of my own desperation. And every day that I have to live with that knowledge is punishment enough. Every day that I watch my children thrive as predators is a reminder of the price of desperation. Every day that I think about what they could have been is a reminder of the cost of my choices. And the worst part is that I can't undo it. I can't go back to that moment in the park and make a different choice. I can't call Patricia and ask for a payment plan. I can't figure out a way to fight Marcus without calling Daniel. The moment has passed. The choice has been made. And now I live in the world that my choice created. A world where my children are predators. A world where they're successful and powerful and completely without conscience. A world where I destroyed the people I was trying to save. And that's the real tragedy. It's not that I sacrificed everything to protect my children. It's that in protecting them, I destroyed them. And that's something I'll never forgive myself for. I'll never forgive myself for being weak enough to call that number. I'll never forgive myself for being selfish enough to choose keeping my children over making sure they were good people. I'll never forgive myself for the choice I made in that moment of desperation. And that's the punishment that I'll carry for the rest of my life.